The committee has appointed Dr. Skinkus to be our secretary pro tem. Please take the roll.
John Keane.
Here.
Tim Walsh.
Here.
Kevin Skinkus is present.
So we have a quorum. The purpose of today's facilities meeting is to go in more detail of the facilities report that was prepared by Carrie's firm, which I'll have to, got it right here, DLA, at the last committee of the whole meeting of the board, and in particular to go into detail on the life safety plan so that the board members, who are almost all present, can understand it completely, since that'll have to be voted on by the board. Our plan for today is Carrie's going to give an overview of the report, probably go through it a little quickly since everybody who's here has heard it before, and then she's going to kind of work her way through the assessment and the life safety in terms of the life safety, and while she's talking about those items, try to connect it to some of the non-life safety items that she sees as big projects that we probably tie together and go on a similar timeline. Okay, Carrie, thank you.
Sure. So real quick, I just want to do an overview of what we talked about last time, so you just kind of get everyone's mind in the same place. And remember, I discussed the process, and this was really the purpose of this was to maintain a planning tool for your fiscal forecasting. And this is a living document, and it contains really two parts. There's the facility assessment document, and then there's the life safety. Now, it's all wrapped up into one big book, which actually I have a copy, hard copy, sitting here. As you can see, it's pretty thick, and that has a lot of detail on it. We were asked to be this, a third party. We looked at your building, did a top-down review of that. And one was to comply with the state requirements of your 10-year survey, and the other was to identify systems and assemblies which will require replacement over time.
I should have mentioned one other thing, Carrie, before you start, even though the only people present are administrators and board members, but the district did post all of your documents to the website, and Carrie is going to work off of the full report that was posted to the website, so she can take you to the pages that are on that report so you can view them while she's discussing it. Okay?
There's 4 different documents on the website.
Comprehensive
There's
facility.
one that's a huge, like 64 megabyte that has all the other documents in it.
It's labeled under the Board of Education tab as the comprehensive facility assessment. And if you have one of the district issued iPads, it's already downloaded on that iPad, correct, David?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Karen.
So no problem. And again, we had a number of architects and engineers go through your facility, and this is what we found. Now, it's important to note that the life safety portion of this must be followed through and acted upon by your school district, must be voted on by the school board and approved to move forward to the Illinois State Board of Education. The other part is just a living document that you can use as a planning tool. Again, there are items in there that you may never do, or there are items in there that you may pursue in accordance with some of the items listed on the life safety. It's just important to have in the back of your mind. We also we had interviews with Joel and Kevin and staff, so that we could understand a little bit more of the history of the building as well as we move through. Then we divided the book up into 3 different categories, which is operations and maintenance items. And that includes door hardware, flooring, ceiling tiles, mechanical equipment, and then capital improvement projects. That's some items like the track resurfacing, synthetic turf replacement, and parking, maybe dealing with one of your issues of parking. And then life safety, and this is the stuff that you have to do. This is the fire-rated enclosures, the tuck pointing, roofs, bleachers, the stadium building, and things that are noted by the state as being a concern and should be corrected. Then we went through a priority process and labeled each one, and some of this for the life safety, you really don't have an option. If it's a requirement, it has to be done within 5 years, which is a priority B. Priority A is within 1 year. There's not many items on your list that is a priority A, and a priority C, which is just in the next 10-year period. Now, the facility assessment excuse me, works the same way. And it's a priority 1, it would be 1 to 3 years, priority 2, 3 to 5 years, and priority 3, 5 to 10 years. That's, again, just something that we recommend, that your district is recommending that you address these items in that time frame. And there'd be numbers in that priority schedule associated with each line item on the facility assessment.
Carrie, just so the audience is clear and the people watching at home, when we originally contracted DLA to do the life safety, we also realized that there was no facility plan for the district or its administration or its board. So while they were looking at the campus and all the facilities for the life safety, we had them generate a facility plan. So things that weren't life safety but would need repair and maintenance, or generating a general schedule for roof repairs or different mechanical issues, would then be all documented in a digital document that the administration, its facilities manager, and the board can work off of for the next several years.
Absolutely. These are some of the examples of the life safety items. These are floor, if you look at the picture on the right, that's a picture of I believe the visitor bleacher on the outside of your facility. And those are the floorboards that are kind of, there's space in between them, which kind of pose a hazard for people who are stepping on them. There's also cracked asphalt on the left, which is a tripping hazard if someone could catch their foot on an edge of that. So we note these types of things in the life safety report. Also, your stadium building had a number of these tripping hazards. There's also, on the bottom right picture, you can see that rebar is exposed on the inside of the building. The concrete has flaked away from it. In order to maintain the integrity of the structure, typically rebar needs to be covered with concrete. That's a kind of a unity piece that it works. That's how the structure works. And you can see how the concrete has chipped away at several edges. So there's a number of life safety issues with the stadium building. So we've written that up as a replacement building, which means that it would cost more to repair than it would be to tear it down and replace it. That's the concept with that. These are some roof pictures. You can see this is one of my colleagues holding back. There's a splice in the roof that allows water to come in, and then a scupper on the left, which is in some pretty sad shape as well. These are just age issues with the building and need to be addressed, because obviously there's some leaking that's happening in the facility, and we want to keep the building watertight and keep the moisture out of the facility. There's some tuck pointing on the roof and underneath the fascia. Those are, again, just signs of aging of the facility and need to be addressed. So these are all included in the report, and these in particular are under the tuck pointings under life safety. There's some tripping hazards within the facility, that maybe some chipping tile or just some aging issues that maybe are a little bit of aesthetic as well, that we would recommend correcting. And Joel, on a regular basis, has been doing this on their own with his staff. Also, you can see that the ceiling tile leaks that we saw during our survey indicate that there were some roof issues. I think you're watertight now, Joel, is that correct? But you're working, your roof doesn't have any active leaks currently, or is that still?
Yeah, we address them as they happen, pretty much.
But it's a sign that the roof is in failure and needs a permanent fix. This is how it shook out from a cost perspective. The capital improvements were about this dollar. This was revised a little bit since my last presentation with some life safety numbers, but you can see the new totals in your new document here. And the overall costs, again, life safety is the important one here, and this is really the item we want to discuss today and entertain any questions about the life safety in general now that you've gotten a chance to take a full look at the document that we have in front of you. So with that, I can point out some examples of how that relates, how the life safety items might relate. I think as I present this to a number of districts, I think how they like to look at it is they take a look at the larger ticket items to begin with. And so those larger ticket items that are included on your life safety happen to be things like roofs, bleacher replacement, I mentioned the bleacher replacement of the stadium. The bleacher replacement also happens on the inside of your facility. That's definitely on the life safety as well. And if we were going to replace the bleachers in your gymnasium, well, the gym floor needs to be replaced as well at some point in time in the near future, because it's been sanded as many times as you can and refinished as many times as you can, so that the life of that has expired somewhat and needs to be replaced. So it would make sense that you do those two projects at the same time, so you replace the bleachers and the flooring at the same time. But the flooring is on the capital improvement side of it, whereas the bleachers are on the life safety. So it may make some sense that you do these projects concurrently. Well, it does make some sense to do them concurrently. It'll save you some aggravation, also some money, because it will make sense to do it at the same time. And that's just one example. There are a number of examples in here. The stadium building, we're going to be doing some work with the stadium through life safety. It may make some sense that there's some other areas around the stadium area, the track resurfacing, the replacement of your synthetic turf field, which is up and coming. The life of expectancy of that is about 8 years currently, so that needs to be replaced soon. And with that, there's also a flood remediation program that we have developed in the life safety as well, because there is a way to remediate some of the flooding that happens on your site. So we'd like to take care of that. That's part of life safety. Then if we were to do that, it would involve some of the drainage with the synthetic turf field. So again, a nice synergy formed with those two projects. Kind of give you an example, but the capital improvement project, the synthetic turf is a capital improvement project as opposed to life safety. But it may still make some sense to do those together. It will. It would also probably have to happen like that. So that gives you a good idea of kind of the things I'm talking about. The other ticket items on there are tuck pointing, and that obviously needs to take place. That's one of the pictures I showed. Keeping your building watertight, the roofing, etc. So, any questions?
I'm sorry if I missed it. This slide we're looking at, is this from?
That was from my last presentation, last time I was here, yes.
Okay, and it's different than what's on the website now.
Right, the numbers were updated, they were just,
I mean, the total's the same. What,
it's just,
something moved from life safety?
yes, the tennis courts should have been in life safety, and so they are now.
Okay.
But not here. Because they had presented a tripping hazard, and they're going to need to have something remediated in order to alleviate that tripping hazard.
So your new updated page, I think, is page 12 of the report.
Yeah.
And the capital improvements now are shown as $33,070,000. So they went down about $740,000 or so, and the life safety is now about $7,700,000. And the O&M's the same, so the shift was between the capital improvements and the life safety, and you're saying it's tied to the tennis court replacement.
That's correct.
Okay.
Did you do a separate calculation like with the stadium where it costs more to replace?
Yes, that's
Or
included
to repair
also.
than replace?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's included behind the life safety.
You just have pages, Karen.
Yes, I will get that for you in a second. Sorry, it takes me a while. It's quite the lengthy document.
PDF is one page different than the page number that's on the document. So you reference page 12?
I was looking at the page number on the PDF.
Right.
The actual page is numbered, page 11, so.
So-
All right, page 11, sorry.
So we'll just make sure we're
So
consistent.
page 249 is the, John, you were asking about that's where that letter begins, that shows the cost of the
tennis
repair of the
courts.
building versus the replacement. So it looks like $1,591,500 versus $1,520,000. So, and again, that's a conceptual estimate of what that would cost to replace the building, to build new.
It's also an individual PDF on the website, too. It's a building replacement letter, it's called.
But in that report, there shows some more pictures of what the facility currently looks like.
So if you want to move on to the life safety report then?
Sure.
Or do you want to cover something else first?
You had a summary, Carrie, of the life safety report that you put in your PowerPoint last time. Is that still included in there? Or is that page,
Well, it was exactly what I showed.
the chart on, what is it, 15?
The
Or
chart on
12, it starts, and then overall cost by project type. Is that considered all life safety, or is that between,
Yes. Let's see. Yes, there is on page 18 of the book, you'll see life safety code issues. They are listed all there. There is a more expanded version back on page 232.
what do you recommend as best practice for the committee to review the summary, or do you want to go through the actual life safety, or just, I don't think we need to go line by line through each
No.
item in the life safety, but I
Right.
think, so your summary, does that capture?
Well, I would suggest we go to the life safety and not do it line by line, because it tells you what's an A, what's a B, what's a C. And we could go to give a little at the beginning of the report to kind of people acquaint themselves with it. And then
Okay.
you can go to some of the bigger ticket items.
So
And
go.
tell how you decided something was an A, B, or C, for
Okay.
instance. Does that?
Sure,
okay?
sure.
Yeah,
So what-
I think people at home would want to know, considering we had the massive reconstruction, and how many things are urgently need to get done,
Mhm.
you know? So if we can focus on the aid and.
Well, not much of the, well, first of all, let me answer the question. Let me just go to the initial life safety report then on page 232, because it will.
232.
Yeah. It'll expand all of that, and I won't go line item by line item, but I'll give you, I'll grab an example of a larger ticket item, which is,
Why don't you just start with the first page and just kind of tell people how it's laid out.
Sure,
Why it's laid
okay.
out that way, and what the columns mean, and then you can go to some of the
Okay.
specific items.
sure, there's an item ID, which you'll notice starts with A1. That's a number that, just an architectural item. They also go into M, Ps, and Es, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. That's how we number them in this chart. Then it will show the room location, or the area which the rule is violated. And the next is the rule violated. It's the actual code that the Illinois State Board of Education recognizes as a violation. And then it's a description of the violation. And then there is a recommendation to how to correct the violation. And then there's a priority code. A priority code, like I mentioned earlier, was either an A, B, or C. And those numbers indicate that, or the letters indicate that an A priority you have to complete it within a year, a B within 5 years, and a C within 10. And how we determine that is that an A has to be a pretty big situation, has to involve egress. If there's a door that's jammed that won't open easily, that's an idea of that. If there's a major situation where there's a tripping hazard that's in a very popular path of exiting, that is something that we would do, is marked as an A, a priority. A B is just if there's a fire-rated door that's missing, and that's important still, but it obviously is a little bit, lots of buildings, lots of school buildings have these kinds of issues. They might not exactly, it might be a 45-minute rated door versus an hour fire-rated door. So while it's required in a code violation, it may not be as dire need of replacement immediately. So then in the C is just any item that is recommended, and I don't even think we have
Not too many.
too many of those. But it's just kind of just the bottom of the barrel here as far as priority is concerned. Now, an example of one of the
Before you
main.
go to that, would you continue working all the way
Oh, yeah, I'm
across the
sorry,
columns,
I'm sorry.
please?
I was just gonna tell you a C example, but anyway. Specifications, that is just, again, another statement for how to correct the violation. It's a little redundant, but that's just the state and how they want the form filled out. And then units of measure, which if it's a door replacement, we'll just say 1 or each. And then the quantity is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many? And the labor code, whether a contractor is going to be doing it or it's going to be done in-house. And then the estimated cost, that's the dollar amount that we come up with today for doing that particular item. And then the estimated completion date, so if it was a B priority, it's gonna need to take place within the next 5 years. If it's an A, it'll say 1 year. And the funding type is not really of my control, that's just something that the district fills in after the case on the IWAS system, which is the electronic version of this document that has to be uploaded to the
So what will we have
site.
to put in for the fund? What do we have to, what will be included there?
I don't know the answer to that, it's how the district plans on funding it, if it's
Tim,
with
how
life
have you
safety.
what have you put there in the past, in your past experience?
It'll be either life safety bonds or,
Life safety bonds or.
Life safety funds?
Capital.
Okay.
you'll have to also put in there how many dollars you currently have in life safety
Okay.
and so on, but that's, the district fills out that portion.
Okay.
So Carrie, could you expand a little bit, if not now, later on, how the estimated cost is derived?
We have an active database in our office, that's all we do is school projects, so I know how much a typical door would be and if it needs to be replaced, so that's just something that we do take from all of the projects that we've bid over the course of the last few years.
So you've got a pretty extensive database, and then you can
Mhm.
sort of match to, what we need, and then,
Yes. Mhm.
okay.
Gary, are you able to bring the same page you're looking at on the screen? Is it on your computer or not?
Yeah, let me get it.
Please.
Why my keyboard's. You're gonna want it with the same page numbers though, aren't you?
Not necessary. If you could do it, not that, we'll say what page number you're on. If you can.
Good, we're on the first page.
We're on the
Okay.
first page, so.
When you presented to the board, you said that for Group A, which is the work that needs to be done within a year, once the life safety report is approved, and we're projecting to maybe take this to the board as early as next week, as late as at the end of this month. So you said it's approximately about 90 days for
Yes.
the state to review it.
Mhm.
And then if they have concerns, what happens then? They send that back to you?
Yes, they may have questions that need further information, so then we'll send in that required information.
Okay.
And yes, so it would be some back and forth if any communication is desired. Yes.
So for priority A's, is it a year from the date the state stamps it approved?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we probably should start, I know they said there's about 65,000 roughly
Mm-hmm.
in priority A's between you and Joel. Can you highlight a few of those? Because think that would answer the question that was asked previously. After just doing $66 million, really, there's only about 65,000 worth of work of things that need to be done within a year that are life safety concerns.
Okay, so,
The first one's on page 235.
right, that's
The
item.
third line item.
A27, yeah. And that
It's
is.
page
basi-
4 of your report.
It's basically a transition strip that's, I'm sure you can't read any of that over there anyway. It's a transition strip that needs to be secured, so it's a tripping hazard. The walking surface of the means of egress shall be slip resistant. I think that the transition strip has come up. You might have already taken care of it, but it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's in our work order database. We're going through these. We started on these about a month ago.
So that matches in the column, you said owner.
Right.
The column that says who's going to do it, right,
Mhm.
Carrie?
Mhm.
Okay.
And it's in ours.
And you
It's a
estimate-
threshold essentially in a
Okay.
doorway.
And is that still part of the 65?
Yes.
Okay. So there's, even though it's a grand total of 65,
Mm-hmm.
portion of that could be done is being done internally.
I mean, one big chunk is that stadium bleachers, that's at $35,000. I mean, that's,
That's on page 239. Or
Can we
8.
ask
So there's-
questions about that?
There's questions,
Chairman Skankis, can we ask questions about that?
Sure.
All right, so Kerry, on that one, let's say brought up, which is A60.
68, I think.
So they replaced the concrete walk by the stadium, home bleachers. And then A61 is a B, though. On that one there, where you have something where you're recommending to rebuild,
Mm-hmm.
tear down, then what happens on that? Can an A, if we're
Yeah,
gonna
as long
replace
as
the
we-
bleacher? you
Right,
know, okay.
as long as we would tell the state that it's all being corrected at once, then it would just be.
Okay.
So that would buy us additional time,
Mhm.
because we wouldn't want to replace the sidewalk if we're
Oh.
going to be
Correct.
breaking up a track or
Mhm.
breaking up something else.
so in the main, I mean, I'm still trying to get a handle on the total of 65, but at least 35 is something we never really touched
A68 on the next page is
on the,
35,000.
when we did the massive rebuilding of this campus.
That's-
We never touched it.
Right, this, the other big item is A68 on page 239, which is $35,000. So the two items of repairing concrete in the stadium are $65,000 roughly, right, Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
But they give you some flexibility if you're planning to do it within the first year, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Those are our ramps to the home bleachers, I'm reading that right?
Yep.
Because on the both sides of the home bleachers, they're probably not ADA compliant either, right?
That's right.
So if you had to repair them, you'd have to do a pretty significant
Yep.
correction, right?
That's correct.
I'm looking through to see if there's any more A's.
Well,
There
that's
is not.
two or 65,000.
Right.
65.8, there's only
maybe-
3
I just wanted to
items.
see
There's like
if we
3
were
items, yeah.
Yeah.
off in our math, but
Kerry, I know that you said had B on it. You know, you have a lot of Bs.
Yes.
Are there Bs that are approaching A status? How do we, is there any way that we can tell that? You know what I'm talking about?
We want to prioritize all.
We have
these.
prioritize the Bs that, is there a B that in a year or two would become an A automatically?
I think that in the way that you would do that would be to compare it to the projects that you, like, if you're going to take care of the stadium building, do all the projects that relate to that, and then, so in the vicinity, I
But-
think that would make sense. But no, to answer your question, there's not a hierarchy of B items. It's really a matter of what makes sense for you fiscally to take care of at the same time. And then, so there'd be financial advantages of putting different projects together. So that was how I would recommend, because even if you look at the B items here, which I know we're only concentrating on life safety, but they do relate to some of the other items on the facility assessment report, which are also, should be taken care of in a 5-year time range. So just keep that in mind, but there is no hierarchy by the state or, a priority for certain B items.
And you also,
versus
somebody
others.
asked at the committee of the whole meeting, but once you submit the report, they don't shift either.
No,
So each year, there's not another set of A items. It's whatever they start, they stay, and
That's-
you have to address them within that category, right?
right.
But you can work with us to help on the Bs to prioritize. Could you do that or not?
Yes. Mhm.
So we sit down and say, okay, I got 85 Bs, but of those 85 Bs, 20 can wait a couple of years or, but if I'm looking at the B priority, these need to be moved up first, right?
Sure, and it would just be based upon, what money you want to spend that year and what projects made sense to do together. So if you're doing a door replacement on the inside of your building, you'd want to do all the doors at one time.
Okay.
I think it's important to probably highlight too, just thinking of the fiscal stuff with Tim McGinnis and with the board and with the committee is, at what point in time, not that we will not try to get as much out of you as we can for what we contracted you for life safety and this facility assessment, but at what point in time then do we have to then rework up another proposal for you to start helping us with the phasing and planning and some of that?
Yes, that's the next phase, and that is not included in the services that we provided a proposal for. What we do is we're done, we've created this document, and that's complete.
Okay.
And we would submit the life safety to the state as part of that requirement and finish up any questions that they have with that process. And submit the safety reference plans, which have to go along with this document, and any other requirements from the state, and then that would be complete.
So any other questions of how we plan the phasing of Bs or As or Cs and that?
We would
that's-
move into a different contract,
Okay.
correct?
So Carrie, let me ask you one more question. Working with us through a 5-year or 6-year period,
Mhm.
you can sit down with, it's probably not in the contract we paid right now, but sitting down with us to make sure that we are prioritizing, saying, okay, this is what I would be doing year 2, this is what I'd be doing year 3. Am I right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We'd help you devise a plan for that.
So why don't we do this? Why don't you, as we talked about before, go through and hit some of the bigger ticket items? And if you pass a few Cs, just tell people why something ended up being a C instead of a B. But
Okay. Well, I think in the roof, like an example of this is
tell them what page.
A73, which is page 239. And that's a roof, part of the roof. Now, we've broken up the roof into several sections. So when we submit the life safety, we'll put it all together in one group. But this is broken down into different sections because that's how we had it in the facility, in the drawing that we put together, just so you can see each section of the roof. But that line item is $185,000. Now, that's that one section of roof, which is needs to be replaced in the next 5 years. And that is a B item. And so that's a really good example. It's these major ticket items like the roofs, each section of the roof, and the bleachers that add up really to the bulk of the life safety survey.
Do one of the diagrams
In the facility assessment, yes.
identify which one is roof number 2?
Yes, they do. And it's under the sections.
Page, Karen.
Yes.
She's trying to find
Roof
it.
assessment?
It's 168, page 168. And so that's something that needs to be replaced over the course of the next decade. It's not a high priority one. It's but it falls, you can only put it in one category for life
Is this
safety
in the
because it's,
lower-
yes.
2 is in the lower left-hand corner?
That's correct. So it's a yellow, right?
Can you orient me which corner?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
The
above the cafeteria,
southwest.
basically.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's not something that needs to be taken care of immediately, but it just should be in your forecasting for having to take care of over the next 10 years.
Okay, so we use page 168
To correspond back to
see where
those,
the
yeah.
roof is.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And while we're on that roof assessment, just so maybe, Gary, if you could real quick, and maybe pull it up on the You don't have it on your document. The public can see it on the web document on page 168. You're on the, I think you have up the actual life safety report. You don't have up the web document, do you? The facility plan?
No, not currently.
Can you pull that up?
It's off the website, what's it called? The,
Comprehensive facility assessment.
thank you.
And it's on page 168 under the,
Yes, that's the color roof.
right. So the nice thing, when Carrie pulls that up for, on the overhead, the nice thing for the administration is this is basically an overhead of all our facilities, and it's a color-coded chart for us as to the life and replacement schedule for each section of our roof, with the green being within the first 1 to 3 years, I think it is.
0 to 3.
0
to 3, then 5 to 7, 10 to 12, and then anything that's in white, we have 20-plus years.
12 plus.
12 plus, oh yeah, 12 plus, I'm sorry. It's so small. It also gives you a legend of the last re-roof date, scheduled replacement date. The roof type indicates areas under warranty. So it's a nice little chart that we can constantly keep updating for our facilities manager.
It tells you when the last time it was replaced, you said?
Yes,
Where is it?
If we knew.
if we knew.
Oh, otherwise it's
So
a
if you
question.
look
Otherwise
at-
it has a
yeah,
question
so if you look
mark
at
there.
that section 2, if you blew it up a little bit, or there's a question mark, then it says if we replace it, it would be
Which is
2023.
pretty much all of
Okay, so we don't have documents to show when we last
We
did.
had no document that either Joel or I could find of any kind of roof plan or replacement schedule plan in any of our electronic files, even the files we received back from White. We could not find anything, so we had to redo this.
it. Although you can see the ones that are on white, Mike.
Yeah, they're all
They all have
2009.
years on it. Or most of them have years on them.
So Carrie, if I'm looking at the green roof sections,
Mhm.
they're all over the place. They're like one part over here, one part over here. Can you work and do, like, say we said we want to do the green, can you do that in
Yes,
those piecemeal sections?
contractors can do that, yes. Mhm.
Part of the reason is because there's separations on the roof between all these, right? It's-
Absolutely.
It's not like,
Well, your building's
They're
been
com-
added on to many times and renovated at different times, so those, yes, there's natural breaking points and the expansion joints and so forth.
I mean, it's not like
separate.
this room where they're gonna,
No,
lines in the middle of the room. There's
absolutely not.
some kind of a geographical break, right?
Absolutely.
Carrie, you want to touch on another large-scale B item?
Sure.
Or some on that same page, Gary.
The bleacher's
Yeah,
a great
239,
example.
You just want to go back there.
So that's on page 239. And the visitor bleacher, it's the one I showed on one of those slides earlier. And so that's A70, and that's to replace the existing bleacher with a new one.
I think we should spend a little bit of time on this, just to talk with the committee, and if the board members have any questions. Because these are, most of these items are related to athletic facilities that haven't been touched in a very long time, but still the perception could be, you know, why are we only addressing athletic facilities? Most of these facilities were not, most if not all, if I'm not mistaken, John or Tim, were not touched during the $66 million project. So, as Carrie mentioned, our last couple compliance visits for the state bleacher reports have shown that all of our bleachers are out of compliance, and that we need to rectify those. But we were grandfathered in under some of the old language. Is that correct, Carrie?
I believe so, yeah, that's what you.
So, the gym floor is to a point to where, Joel, and you could talk to this a little bit about the sanding of the gym floor. It can't be screened down anymore?
Yeah,
We're at a point-
you're right. we reached a point where there's just not that much wood left. It's kind of at the end of its life cycle, and whatever maintenance you do to it's gonna be risky.
Now, that's not something that would be on a life safety report, but that was an example that Carrie was given how it coincides with the facility report, in that if we're gonna be taking everything out of the gym in regards to any kind of seating structures or bleachers and redo those as a life safety issue, that's a perfect time when the gym's bare and empty to redo your floor. And those are some of the long-range planning that we need to be doing as we discuss some of the phasing.
Well, what scares me even about the gymnasium bleacher, you go that high up, and there's no railing except for the side.
Right.
Somebody falls, it's a very easy fall, there's no designated aisles up there, which causes a big issue. You could fall from, that's why if I ever went to an event in a gym, I stayed at the first or second level. I couldn't see myself going all the way up to the top. Just safety-wise, it's not good.
And those
So-
are examples of where we're out of compliance in the reports too.
Right.
Exactly those
There
things.
are aisles of steps sanded or something,
They're painted.
painted or some type. But what's the life cycle of sanding, varnishing, and painting a gym floor? Off the top of your head, do you know that?
No, it depends on the wear and tear and how it's been used and those sorts of things. I know that floor's been in there for at least 30 years and probably more, 30 that we can verify, and probably more than that. Basically, we're relying too on the expertise of contractors and that to come and look at it and say,
Yeah.
basically we can, we can do it maybe one or two
They
more
did,
times. And
they
that's it.
did something to the floor in the summer of perhaps
Yeah.
2009.
Yes, it did.
Did they sand it? I know
Sanded it
they-
Yeah,
down
they-
and repainted.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my question is, how long does that sanding and repainting expect to last? Like when you put in the AstroTurf into the football field,
Mhm.
that's expected to last 8 to 10, 12 years.
Right.
So what is that we did in 2009 expected to last? And then, that would give me an idea where I think,
Sure.
from my personal view, okay, it's time to address that facility. Do you have that in your mind, or?
Yeah, the typical maintenance cycle on those things is, unless somebody wants to change something for, add new lines for new sports and that kind of stuff. But typically, the life cycle in a high school, in a busy high school like this that gets used the way it does, the regular maintenance, we do a screen and recoat annually, and that, you can do that for about 4 or 5 years, then you gotta sand again.
So we're almost at that point.
Yeah, right.
Well,
We're nearing
we've
it.
gone through
That's
that.
typical.
We've sanded down and repainted probably 4 or 5 times over 30 years. So the last one that's just, that we have records on was the one in '09.
So Joel, let me rephrase what Mike said.
Mhm.
Given I put in a gymnasium floor, every 4 to 5 years I have to sand it down, reseal it and all that other stuff like that.
Right.
How many times can I get away with that on a floor, wooden floor?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know that that's an exact science, but it's again, I would defer to the contractors that come in and kind of give me an assessment of what the floor is like. I know, you start to get boards failing and cupping, and we have a little bit of that too. But, so there's other defects in the woods and stuff like that start to tell you that, you're kind of nearing the end of it's not just the sanding, it's kind of a cumulative wear and age on it.
So Carrie, in your experience, how long would something like that last, a gym floor?
I typically.
Ballpark figure, I have no idea.
I don't know, have an age, it really does depend on how often you've sanded it down, and I don't know exactly the life expectancy of it, depends on the thickness of the wood. So I can't really give you that on that, but I know that every time, our clients have someone out, they always say, okay, we only have 2 more sandings left in this gym floor.
Okay.
So.
That's
And it
something-
typically comes from those
Or 1 or
contractors.
3, or yes.
Is that something you keep track of then in the facility assessment, obviously?
Absolutely, because that's important to know when you're gonna need a new floor. before, so.
I have a couple of questions. On, what page it is, 239, I think, there's, so my first out of 3 questions. It's on the construct new 1,600 capacity home bleacher and replace bleachers, about $800,000. And so my question on that one was, do we get the same thing, or do we get a new modern thing that does the same thing? Would we be constructing this facility that had locker rooms underneath, but it wouldn't be this massive concrete building?
Right, you
Okay.
want to replace, you know, the rule would be replace like with like. So if there's a 1,600 capacity, then you would replace with the 1,600 capacity. Now, of course, you could add costs to that and do whatever capacity you want, but the state would recognize it as this. That's why we write it up with like. Does it have to be a concrete building? Absolutely not. But I do think it's important that whatever material we select, it would be something that can tolerate moisture, because inevitably that site will flood again. So we have to prepare for that.
Would
You
it
asked
still
about
have the
the
locker?
visitor side though, right?
No, well, I think this one, it's actually the 800,000 is, or the 600,000 is
The homestead.
homestead.
Okay.
What- Does that include the locker rooms underneath?
No, actually, the $1.5 million figure that I talked about earlier, that would be cumulative for
Oh.
everything that was in there.
Okay.
So here they're just adding up line item after line item to show each violation. That's just how the state would like to take a look at it. But the letter, which is on page 249, starts you can see that all of those line items are added together, and at the end of that letter, it equals $1,591,500. So that's in total, so that's the building replacement, whatever,
Okay.
the construction of that, locker rooms and everything that you have currently.
So Kevin, in that facility, and maybe Joel could answer, we're not using all of it at this point, right? There are parts of that building that are just shut down.
Correct. Right, that whole
The
concourse
concourse.
that I think it was famous for, of having the concession stands and the restrooms
Yeah.
in the middle of the seating area and the ramps, although it's out of compliance, and it's been closed down, and it's been out of use for several years, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
it's storage right now.
Okay.
So we're not even using that facility. Some of the water down in some of the showers work, but a good portion of the other showers are non-operable. Or is all the plumbing working in
Yeah,
the
the
bottom
plumbing,
part for the
the
locker?
plumbing is okay. I think the plumbing issues are really the old galvanized that's in there. That's the big issue in there, plumbing wise.
Right. And then we also we need to do some stuff with sprinkling and fire protection, some of that stuff, correct?
Correct.
So theoretically, looking at this list, you could say you just had aluminum bleachers cost $600,000. You're basically pricing this at 1.5, so there's $900,000 that could be used for something else.
Right, to create the structure below.
Structure below, or accessory
of it.
building, or
Correct.
that. There'd be plenty of options.
Correct.
We're not wedded to this necessarily once the state approves it, or.
Actually, you're not wedded to the solution at all until we design it, because these are conceptual solutions at this point in time. This is just, to formulate costs associated with the violation. So
So once
really,
it-
the actual solution comes down the road. It's not that you're bound to exactly what we're saying here, it's just that you're bound to replace it.
So then, that bleacher with the concourse and its glory day and everything, that might be a separate conversation where we say we don't need all that,
Correct.
or maybe we do want it, or whatever, but that would be that
Correct.
conversation where we talk about how
You
much.
probably want to have restrooms in a football stadium. Just
Right.
There's 1,500 people on one side. We've gone with kids to get older. It's nice to have a restroom there.
Be nice to have a concession stand with running water.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and so that's a conversation that we'll
Right.
probably have to have,
Sure.
right? Because we haven't seen it working in so long, we forget what it was like.
Right.
That's that second part that Dr. Skinkis was talking about how we would work with you to figure out the next steps, or, and that would involve design of that area.
Leading into that and staying on that side of the campus, let's talk about another big ticket item, which is the tennis court.
That was my second question, good.
Sorry, Laura.
No, good, go with that, I was looking for that.
We know we have some significant cracking, tripping hazards, some drainage issues. So we know those are deemed life safety. What would fall then into that second phase of this is sitting with the architect, the Board of Education, community, however the board wants to decide it is, do we replace the tennis courts where they're at? Do we move the tennis courts? All of those are things that can be done after the life safety report is approved. The main thing that the life safety report is acknowledging is that within the next 5 years, we should replace the tennis courts. Correct? Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
Does that mean the whole structural base that we were talking about?
Yeah.
Like it's the way it drains water and everything, right?
Everything.
Drainage, the tripping hazards, the fencing
Okay.
around it, correct.
Okay.
Do you have a page on that too, where that line item is?
I think it's a $700,000 lump sum number that was added.
Well,
I'll
it's
figure
now
out.
added into this, I just want to see.
It's a A113, and that's page 242.
Oh, yes, I see it, thank you.
Sorry, 750,000, Mike.
That's correct.
So the 750 carries that roughly, what, I mean, if the board just puts this in conceptual, it's 150,000 a court, is it 125? I mean, is that kind of how you figure that in there, or is that including everything?
That's everything. That's to, completely take it down to base and redo it the correct way. And that's considering the same amount of courts that you have
Any lighting?
currently.
No lighting?
And it may include, do you have lighting currently? I don't recall.
No.
Okay, so then, no, it wouldn't include lighting.
Kerry, can we do what you propose with the new home bleachers by putting drainage, like pits or wells underneath, to help, we could do that with, under the tennis court too, and even add more drainage?
Yes, we'd want to tie that all in.
Okay.
So those are all the things above it, the 295 and the 273? Right above the tennis courts?
That's correct.
Execute flood improvement project?
Mm-hmm. So there'll be some flood remediation with that.
Now putting in a backflow, and Joel and Gary, I mean, this is something that's probably fresh in most of the community members' minds is, I mean, we get water in that basement pretty regular. I think we got water just a couple weeks ago, and we had a pretty good hard rain, right?
Correct.
So is installing some of these backflow preventers, is that stuff that's gonna help that, or are we just, because of our location of being surrounded by the river and the floodplains, that we're always gonna get that seepage in water?
Well, I think that the goal here is to remediate some of that. We're not going to alleviate all of it at any point in time, because you are partially in a floodplain. Certainly the 100-year flood is not going to, can we get to a 25-year flood though? Or, we can get as close, we can try to remediate as much as we can. And I do think you can improve your situation, which is why that line item is included there.
So let me ask you a question, where we've seen seepage coming before, like in the girls' locker room, the washroom right there, where we see it not coming through the pipes, but leaking around the pipes, we could try to stop that, or come up with a plan to stop that seepage coming in, or?
We have to, take a really good investigative look at this and design it,
Okay.
because it's not designed currently, it's conceptual, but we've had a civil engineer through here to take a look at some things, and we've determined that there are some components that we could improve upon.
Okay.
I don't know if it's gonna solve that particular item. I'd have to defer to him.
Well, you looked at the big ticket item on that you think if we put, if I recall correctly, you think if we put, for instance, backflow preventers, that would cut down on some of the serious floods that we get in, like you said, not 100-year, but assuming that you could do it, which is a big if.
Right.
I mean, there's also other methods, like you could dig out around the foundation and tar 'em
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff, but you
There's
would,
a lot of things
you would
that
really
can
have to
do.
look at
Exactly.
the cost benefit of whether it really would,
Exactly.
how often would it protect us from the water getting in anyway? Because we're so close to the river, right?
Right.
Yeah, because some of the cracks and stuff, I mean, there's water coming through wall joists, is not really up floor drains. So I meant a backflow, I mean, some of that stuff I just think is because of where we're located, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
Do tiles help with that? You know, when people have tiles put in their basements, would tiles help with some of that?
It may, and, you know, we can look at what's been done to date and what we can do to improve upon it once we get to that point, but it's a district decision to pursue that.
And the other thing, when you talked about drainage, again, my recollection of the tennis courts are, one reason that we can't really repair what we have is they've gone pretty far.
Absolutely.
And they just don't have a solid base anymore. But part of that is because over the years, the sewers have failed. And if we had good drainage on the tennis courts, it would keep in the water away from, we wouldn't run into the kind of freezing and cracking that is an annual issue. And they'd probably be in better shape for a longer period of time.
That's probably true with the drainage issue, but I can't speak to what kind of sub-base was put underneath
Oh,
those
that's-
tennis courts, but
that's
yes.
true. Okay.
I would imagine the same even for our track and our turf. I mean, as much as that's built for durability through rain and the different seasons, I don't think it's meant to be submerged under a foot of water for 6 or 12 hours or a day or two like it was.
Times 3. Yeah.
Right, 3 times in the last, couple of years. You had a third question.
Well, you got it on the flooding, and so that brings up another question, how we as a board, do we have to look at flooding? And John, it's probably appropriate for you, does that make it a greater safety issue with the water because of mold and other contaminants? I mean, is that something that we need to be waiting or thinking about more?
Well, that's why we talked to Carrie about it already.
Uh-huh.
To say, isn't just because of that, the last time we had a flood, Joel's crew was here for several days, we had a lot of damaged uniforms, things like
Yeah.
that had to be disposed of, and then they had to bleach the whole basement down because of the mold that was in there. The kids couldn't be exposed to it. So to the extent you could, she agreed that she told us it's a life safety, the extent you can prevent the moisture and mold from getting in, that protects the health of the building and the health of the students and staff. So that's kind of was part of the impetus to make sure we had something on flood. Exactly how you would work it out. You'd have to, it's like everything else, they take a best effort to say, like these are big ticket items that we think would help, but you design it specifically, how you'd want to do it, look at the cost and the advantages of different types of alternatives.
So then you're thinking maybe we as a board would start to prioritize some of these things that we think are important?
Yes.
Okay.
Even within the 5, if you go past the first year, even if you go to the, years 2, 3, 4, 5, the 4 years, you got almost pretty much the bulk of the report is in that period. And if you go, and I think we'll do it, you go to the O&M and capital items, some of them we might do, some we might do. Some of these we might do different, but you certainly would, to the extent you could, tie some of the projects together because of the economics, the planning, the fact that if you tear the stadium down, nobody can use it for whatever the period is, a year. So you don't want to do that one year and the next year, do something with the track and have that out of commission for another season or whatever you're going to do. And you do the same thing with flooding, probably, at
Try
least
to
in
just
parts of it.
Address it all at once.
And there's parts you can, the roof. Some part, again, you might, even though she had those different categories, you might find out that if we, replace a bigger segment of it, the contractor will give us a discount. And if we do it now, and or maybe when before the economy booms again, you might get a better deal and decide you're gonna do a little more now. So, there's flexibility in both ends of the plan, on the life safety and just the rest of the items on the, long-term plan here.
I think, Tim, that's a great point, 'cause I mean, if you think about it, we have 4 sets of bleachers. Home football, visiting football, or home stadium, visiting stadium, home basketball, visiting basketball. So, I mean, if you're able to go to a contractor and say, we're not only replacing our stadium bleachers, but our gym bleachers.
There's not a bleacher we have that's compliant with all the rules anymore in any of our gyms, in our swimming pool, in our football stadium, because they're either too steep, don't have aisles that they're supposed to have, aren't closed the way they're supposed to be, don't have handrails. I mean, if you put them all together, we get cited every year for that. So, again, and then Mike asked a good question. Do you really need to replace? What if the floor would last a little bit longer? But in the same hand, you rely on your expert to say it doesn't have another sanding. Joel told us it's about 5 years, and we're about 5 years. If you're going to rip the stadiums out in the gym anyway, does it make sense then to, well, you've got them out of the way, replace the floors? Because, if the floor was brand new, it wouldn't make sense.
Right.
You wouldn't tear a brand new floor out. You'd work
Right.
around that. But if you're to a point where the floor probably needs to be replaced and you got to tear the stands out anyway, does it make sense to do it at the same time? Those are the kinds of decisions we'll have to make.
I think the bleachers are pretty important because they're an accident waiting to happen. And when you say not a single set of bleachers in the entire facility are compliant, that's a little nerve-wracking.
Is there a question here? Tennis courts, stadium, bleachers, roofs. Is there
Flood
another-
control.
flood? Is there another big B we're missing? Those are pretty big Bs. The parking is not on the life safety, so I know it's nothing that needs board approval at this time. But it is something that's in that capital development plan. There's a couple different options in there, so that's what maybe makes that larger, the number look larger than what it actually is if we're gonna be doing some of these renovations, we should look at big picture, and we know parking is a major issue on this campus. So we have done some preliminary discussions with the zoo to see if there's different options we can work out to try to address some parking issues. We also have talked to some local municipalities about, is it feasible to maybe donate some land to us for us to build our tennis courts off-site, so then we can make all of that area parking. So there's some different concepts in there that are in the facility assessment plan that once we get into this phasing portion of the project after the report's approved and we start doing a long-term plan, it's something we should be looking at. Because we are currently paying for all of our parking. This year we are on a lease with the zoo that we leased a lot for 180 school days. This year we paid $18,000 for the 180 school days. We also lease Rockefeller from the village of Brookfield. Some of that is offset by selling the student parking permits, but then there's some additional costs the district pays. So we grand total, we pay roughly, I think, $31,000 for our 2 parking, and neither one of them do we fully own. And that's an annual expense. So that's something that, if we're truly looking at a long-term facility plan, we should try to look to develop a parking solution, or at least a solution of some parking spaces that we know we own and can use and maintain and not have to work out with another group. So that's something we need to consider as we're doing a long-term plan.
Maybe we ought to be talking about our parking subsidy that we've been doing for a long time, and then it would, if it cost a lot more to park here, that conversation would become more important.
You mean for the students?
Yes.
But I find, my son can walk. I'll pay for his parking if there's a spot, but when you come here at we've had at our own board meetings, when you gotta park 2 blocks, you're planning to be here for 7 o'clock meeting, and you get here at 10 till, and gotta park 2 blocks away. I mean, I think it's a bigger problem in events than whether, I mean, again, I'm not saying don't think about it, Laura, charge more, and, we wouldn't have as, but it seems there's more pressure on parking when the school's being utilized for events, when, the zoo's doesn't allow us to use the zoo lot in particular.
I just think it would make it more important, a more important conversation as we really talked about the state we're in for parking hours.
That's true.
Well, one of the things we talked about preliminary was that if we had increased our own parking spots that we own, we could eliminate the whole raffle concept and sell more student parking permits, which would help offset the cost of even maintaining our own parking lot or our own parking structure. So it's not, the concept is definitely there. It's just that realistically, I think we own, the Rockefeller we don't own, but I would say that's closer to being more of our own parking. It's 95 spots. That's it. So, I mean, there's times here where there's significant, the community, our rental schedule and our building usage schedule, Joel can attest to, is 7 days a week. The only night that's slow is Saturday night. I mean, Art was going through it the other day with Joel, myself, and Tim McGinnis. Sundays, we're from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. between different community groups using the field house, the gyms, the pool. And when those fall on busy weekends with the zoo and that's lots closed and stuff, parking is definitely a problem. We do, I'm not telling anything the board doesn't already know. So it's something that needs to be on our plans.
Is there any more specific questions people might have in the life safety?
Gary, you're just, I think you're looking for the board to say, hey, can I submit this report
That's correct.
into the state? And then from there, we can then sit down and prioritize working with Joel's group and with your group to find out what we need to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you tell us exactly what pages those are, or I'll give you some pages and you can tell me if that's correct? It starts on,
It's basically Appendix B, starting on what's marked at the bottom on page 219,
Yes.
and it goes to, marked at the bottom, it's the end of the spreadsheet, right, 248?
Well, it will include that letter,
The next letter?
the letter, it would include that, and which is 251, and all of the pictures associated with that, which is 252. And then it would include the drawings. Those
All
would
the
be-
way to the end?
Yes,
Okay. And that's the document that
will be submitted to the state.
we're meeting here tonight to
Well, we're gonna go over the rest of the report. Mike, but-
put on public display. That's something that the board is hopefully going to vote on in the near future.
Right,
That's just one part of this whole
right.
process. Okay.
On the website, there's a 38-page document. Is that the life safety document that, Carrie, that we would be submitting to the state? I think it's the one you pulled up first, PDF. It's like 32 pages. Is that the
One
life
second.
safety report that would go to the state?
Do you know the name of it by chance?
Well, it's a 10-year life safety survey report.
That's it.
Yeah.
So is this the one we need to
Right.
approve to go to the state?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would ask that, I don't know what John or Tim would want to do, but that's the key that I think for now, we would want to make sure all the questions are answered so the board
Right.
feel comfortable approving.
Do you have to amend your letter to cover the tennis courts? No?
We haven't submitted anything.
We haven't submitted.
I mean, do you have to amend the draft of the letter in order for us to submit it to include the tennis courts?
It should have been, no, we're not, that's not in relationship to the stadium building. The tennis courts are not
So it's
part of the
only a
stadium
building that you have to
That's
explain replacement versus
That's correct.
new, not
Mhm.
other type, okay. So we don't have to amend
No.
for that purpose.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It was a trick question.
You
I
said
got.
that, you told us that before, but I forgot. So it's because of the building that there's another special requirement. Okay.
So if we can have a finalized letter, I think, to the board that they can look at and review.
This is fine.
Okay, all right, so Kevin, make sure it's in there.
Well, I still think we should, at least at a high level, let Carrie just go through the other sections so the board is aware of what is in the report, in case they haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing.
Sure.
On the various sections, I mean, then maybe you can, highlight, and for the community too, in case they want to go through it, what, the purpose of the section and kind of what they could look for in it.
Well, really, the major, and I would really strongly urge you to start by looking at the page 12, which is actually the page 11, and that's all the reports, and they're at a kind of a higher level, less detail. The reports that follow just break down this information that's in the first section of the report summaries into great detail and tell you all that you need to know about every line item that makes up this list. But the first page, page 11, shows the capital improvements at $3 million, roughly, and then the O&M at $3.5 million. Now, we've already mentioned a number of the capital improvements, which would be, the gym floor. There was also, some others that kind of added up to that. The O&M area had more or less like painting and stuff that Joel is working through on his list, which is why you see the wants and work orders. We deduct about $1.9 million from the grand total because that's something that's already is either in the process of being executed or is planned to be executed by Joel and his staff over the course of the next few years. And that's probably all a lot of it is O&M and
There's some
life safety in there, but the bulk of it's O&M. And that's painting and some more of these repair issues that were mentioned earlier than you might have seen. They all add up obviously to big dollars, but the life safety is where the bulk of that is. And as Dr. Skikas mentioned, the capital improvements with the parking, that eats up a very large portion of that $3 million. And flooring replacement, some major flooring replacements in there as well. So those together kind of comprise that area. Again, each section, I can go section by section and tell you a little bit about it. The next section is the MEP reports. This is just the breakdown, long version of the line items that you see in the facility assessment for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. This is our engineer's report that says, I looked at these systems, this expectancy is, this life expectancy is here, and these are the recommendations and the conclusions. The next is a civil site conditions report. That's on page 40, and that talks about, that's just really a little bit more of that flooding program that we talked about, some possible solutions for that. Again, just conceptual. In that area, our engineer also FOIA'd some documentation so that they could understand what was done to date with the previous construction, because we didn't have any record of that. So that's all included in this document, and that is actually in one of the appendixes as well.
Before we move on to that one, on page 44, there's a schematic where there's a pictorial of some of the issues they think should be addressed as far as flooding in particular.
Sure.
That I think might interest people.
Where?
It's on page 44.
And you said the plumbing, heating, and ventilation, that was 27? That was those issues? Are those life safety issues, or those?
On page 27?
On page 27, the section, like you said, the sections of the report?
The mechanical, electrical.
Some of the
Yes.
things may translate over to life safety, but not all of them. It's just more of
Okay.
an all-inclusive report of the top-down review that was done by the engineers.
Oh, okay.
So it's from all sections. And then the facility assessment report, that's really the bulk of that other section, and that includes O&M, capital improvement, and life safety. They're all listed
You skip one thing that you did extra work on, though, in section 6 is the existing site and building plans, which might interest people, and you did gather what you could and put what you learned into an AutoCAD system where we have electronic versions of it now, right?
Sure, yeah, that's a very good point. You're absolutely right. We did take a lot of time and effort to go through and find those drawings and put them in an organized fashion, which is nice for your school district to have now at their disposal. And then.
And I guess the only, if you don't mind, on
Sure.
the facilities assessment, because some people have asked, what's life safety, what's O&M, what's capital? I think this is maybe the easiest section to just kind of skim through it and see what kinds of items and cost that the Carrie and her firm have determined should be capital versus life safety versus O&M cost. So if you, since some people are, thinking about what are the different parts of the overall scheme, this probably, unless you would suggest a different place, Carrie, might
No,
be
it's good.
probably the best place to go through and just peruse it and see what the different parts of the project, since we didn't go very deeply into anything outside of the life safety report.
Sure. There's a big photo diary at the end of that too, that you can see lots of pictures of the existing facility, and they correspond to line items on there, and the photo numbers are listed associated with it as well. Section 8 is the roof assessment report, and that's on page 167, and that's that drawing that I have up there on the screen, and then photos that are associated with it as well. And then finally, there's the long-range master plan, and again, that really outlines the capital improvement that you may want to take a look at. And it really shows the athletic complex capital improvement project, the stadium fence, the life safety issues, as well as lighting, the stadium, the actual synthetic turf replacement, the tennis courts, and it looks at an all-inclusive cost for that, so you can kind of get a big picture of what that might all add up to. And then renovation of gymnasium, with the support spaces, the kind of the examples that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, the conclusions and recommendations report, which basically states that we need to use this as a tool for planning in the future and proceed to the next step, which is figuring out what we want to do first and implementing a phasing plan for this work.
What's just so people know, because the other place where you have a lot of the detail is Appendix A, the full detail facility assessment report, and just tell a little bit what's the difference between that one and Section 7, the facilities assessment report.
It's just really got all of the detail that we put in, so
Okay.
It's just the name of the item number, the name of the location,
It's even more
the category.
detailed. Okay.
Yes, it just adds more line items to it. So it's really the database that we extract all of the information out of. This is just the raw database for that. And it's a tool that Joel's using to identify projects as he moves forward.
Does anybody want Carrie or Kevin or any of us to go further into any of the sections on the long-term plan versus, she pretty much went over life safety.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, that's why we said, does anybody want to?
So if I'm looking at printed page 61, am I looking at the life safety section? I believe on printed page 60.
Yes.
It starts. So when I'm looking on the middle of printed page 61, second column, item number 800, it talks about firewalls, fire barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just speak to what that is? Nothing more than,
Sure, if there was a hole in the wall above the ceiling level or some fire pop missing, whatever, that would be an area that needs to be just taken care of as far as the wall needs to be reinstated above the ceiling line and just the fireproofing
So we have two different rooms and somewhere the wall has,
as a penetration through it.
You
okay.
might remember, Gary saw that in the basement, there's some walls like that too. Because he asked, is it kind of an error from before, or why did it happen? I don't think we really know the answer to
I'm
the
not sure
question. We
why
just-
it's currently
just-
like that, but I do know that it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I'm not saying why it's there, but that's $47,000 right there. I thought it was on this page too. Yeah, I saw some places where, you know, the door over here has a window in it. And somewhere in your report, it says that certain doors don't have a window in it and need to be replaced. Are you familiar with that issue? Is it, what category does that come in?
What category?
Is that a life safety, capital improvement, O&M?
It is a life safety, I believe. It's a recommended best practices for school buildings because you need to have a vision panel in any room that a student might be with an adult behind the door.
Okay, and specifically.
Oh, so we want windows.
Right,
Yes.
specifically, they
Yeah.
talked
Yes.
about the alumni lounge. In all this detail, somewhere, my notes aren't very good, but somewhere, the alumni lounge doesn't have doors with windows.
Right.
And so that's probably a 5-year, we need to fix that. And is that state law we have to do that?
It is recommended by the regional offices of education.
Okay. Then let me just see if I can find
Is
this.
it also recommended now for safety type, like, issues where, you know, there's a concern about somebody penetrating into our building so that people want to.
Yeah, it's actually a complicated topic because it really involves, if you look at it from a security standpoint, for an intruder to come in, some people view it as that it might be an issue that you would not want windows, but whereas from a safety standpoint with adult and children behind a closed door, they want to have a vision panel. So it's
Yeah, the
a
fire
topic
department wants
of
them
dis-
too,
Right,
so they
a
can-
topic of discussion. So.
It's on page 82, Mike, line 166.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of doors that don't.
$6,400
Yeah, there's
for the
lots of-
alumni lounge.
Yeah, there's lots of other doors that don't have it, I thought too.
The alumni lounge is 6,400. Okay.
And then, I had on page 100, but I'm not necessarily seeing it. There was something about the dance studio floor being replaced, and that was an O&M. And
Dance studio replaced flooring.
what,
It is 120,
what item number is it? The second column?
197.
Yes. Confirm age of dance floor. Isn't that one of the 2009 brand-new classrooms we put in was the dance?
Yeah.
So would we expect to replace a dance floor from 2009 to present? Or do you, and you may not recall, is it so far damaged that it needs to be replaced?
I don't really recall the exact condition of
And
that,
then,
why
and
it
then,
was determined that that was.
then it's listed as a priority 3, and a priority 3 for
That's the-
O&M
the
is 5
first.
to 10 years?
Right.
It might just need to be, discover the age to figure out if it needs to just be resanded and varnished.
Exactly, yeah.
Not necessarily replaced.
But that price there is a replacement price?
It does replace flooring.
Yes.
Seems pretty cheap.
Okay.
I don't know what the size of that dance studio
Yeah,
is.
it's a synthetic floor too, it's not a.
Oh, okay.
It's something not quite as large as this room, perhaps?
Okay, so that sounds about right
All
for
right.
synthetic floor then, yeah.
How much is that, Mike? How much was it?
23.5.
23.5. Not million, 23,000.
Okay.
So I was just trying, those are some of my questions as I went through and was trying to understand how you read this.
But again, on the O&M side and on the capital improvement side, these are things that are optional for your district. It's
Nice
not-
to do's, not to.
Right, it's not something that just because we put it on a list that has to happen. If we notice something different or abnormal about it and wanted to, you know, ask the question further. So you may not need to replace it, but, you know, that's an option for your district.
Okay.
Does any
And so this report has, the life safety report that you're asking the board to give you the go-ahead to file, has a few items that we're telling the state that have to be done within a year, and that's the $65,000 figure.
3 items.
That's correct.
And majority of the other items need to be fixed within a 5-year period.
That's correct.
Okay.
Laura, anybody else? Well, then I think we should talk about what our plan is to go forward. So first of all, our principal goal for today was to have Carrie explain the life safety so that when it comes before the board, there's comfort and the ability for us to discuss it and vote on it. With the idea, Kevin, do you know which meeting you want to have it put on the agenda yet?
I'm going to bring it to the November 12th. That will be the second time the board's seen it, plus this committee will be 3 times. See how the board feels about possibly taking action on it at the November 12th. If not, we have a committee to hold on November 26th. But I mean, it's been vetted now for about 3 to 4 weeks.
And unless people felt differently, I don't think we need to have Carrie come again
No.
to answer questions. Thank you, Carrie. So then the other part of it is the long-term plan. So again, it's, you know, went a little bit deeper, but I think Carrie has explained it well enough. One question well, 2 questions. One is, when will we take draft off it and we finalize it, Carrie, do you know?
Whenever your district approves it.
Do we have to, not the life safety, but the long-term plan? Do you expect us to approve that also?
I expect you to approve it as a working document,
Okay,
but I only felt comfortable putting draft on it.
Okay.
So you've had this meeting and determined that you want to use it as a working tool.
do you want to bring it up at the same meeting?
It's not, it doesn't need formal approval. I think
No,
that
it's
we-
just
just to
wanted-
say that I think this is
Okay.
what we need going forward.
The only other thing is, would you, in the table context or index, would you put the page numbers
Yes.
when you finalize it? So if, assuming this is how it's gonna get finalized. So we've approved the life safety, we know it's gonna take about 3 months for the state, assuming they don't have objection, it could take a little longer.
Mhm.
Then we start the timeline with the one
Well, we
year
have
in
to
particular.
put it into the Iowa system too. So
After they approve it?
After you approve it. So
Okay.
What was that, Carrie?
We have to put it into the Iowa system. Right now, it's just in an Excel spreadsheet, but we have to physically, it's not just like a cut and paste either.
After the board
We type
approves it,
all.
you have to do that?
Yes.
Okay,
Or we can do it now, but I mean, it's not approved.
okay. And, so it takes you a week or 2 to do that?
Yeah. totally.
And then it gets the
Sent to the
the
state.
state has,
Exactly.
usually takes about 3 months or so,
Mhm.
assuming they don't have a lot of objections. Then we start our 1-year timeline for the 3A items, which shouldn't be difficult for us to meet. And then so at some point, I mean, what's your idea now, Kevin, to have a discussion on the kind of overall planning and considering using, you know, our architect to help us go through the planning stage?
I would think probably after the first year, we'd start to gather with the advisory council, my advisory council, and with Carrie to discuss what her expertise has been with other districts and how they have attacked this kind of plan, and get an idea of what, and then have myself and the my advisory council could report back to the board. What I'd like to do is, once this is submitted and once we work out with DLA how we want to go forward with their services and their assistance, is there's no reason we probably can't start doing some preliminary planning or phasing. At least put together a rough timeline to say, here's how this would look now in spring of 2014 or January of 2014, and where we should be in January 2015, January 2016, try to lay some things out.
But don't make any
Right.
firm commitments. We have the money from the state that you just start to think about.
Sure. But I think that would be their next, while this is getting approved, you know, you don't want to put too much work into a phasing or planning process in case the state comes back and says they're not approving something.
Right.
And something needs to be reconsidered, so we're somewhat on hold.
Yeah.
Right.
Carrie, is there any grant money, so given the life safety aid, I know that, you know what I mean? To me, life safety aid, 2 of the 3, you're gonna incorporate in with maybe a new stadium. Is there any grant, federal or state grant monies out there that can help us with any of the B items?
Yes.
Yeah, with like the anti-flooding thing, is there monies for that? Is there monies for electrical improvements? Is there monies for handicap access? You know what I mean?
There's money for energy efficiency, which is a grant that's currently out right now that we're going to apply for your roofs.
There's some,
We've already applied, we have 2
Okay.
grants that are pending, a $50,000 school
Yeah.
maintenance grant and a $250,000 energy efficient grant for some roof repairs. So we're constantly.
So if we just
Gary's
keep on looking for
constantly-
that as an extra source.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good.
yeah, so, now we're gonna just move on to the next item on our agenda, which is visitor comments. And, we have one visitor, so I'll read what do we say here. Board of Education welcomes and encourages the participation of its citizens in the business of the school district. Thank you for your attendance. Visitors are welcome to ask questions or make comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If a person would like additional time, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent. For more details, please refer to Board Policy 230, Publication, Participation at Board of Education, Public Participation at Board of Education meetings and petitions to the board. Are there any visitors' comments?
I just came tonight, I wanted to get a sense of scope and size and, generally what we're talking about in terms of
Well,
long-term facilities assessment.
Lynn is the
Thank you for
president of
coming.
95.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for coming. Is there any other items you want to discuss, John or Kevin?
I don't have any at this time. We got our update on the pool, we're still holding on everything else, so.
Somebody want to make a motion that we adjourn?
Can I finally make a motion?
Yeah.
Can I- Motion
I
to
guess you
adjourn.
can.
Motion to adjourn.
Is that legal?
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I'm a part of the
John, you want a
committee, right?
second or you want me to?
And Bears are winning
I'll second
14-10.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's adjourned then.
Thank you.